Chapter 28, He Follows. The vibration of the Gulf Stream's engines was the only thing I could feel. It was a low, steady hum that seemed to match the thrum of the blood in my veins. I sat in the captain's chair of the main cabin, staring out the window at the endless expanse of the Atlantic. New York was behind us. The tower, the board, the billionaire title, all of it was fading into the distance like a dream I had finally woken up from. For the first time in 15 years, my phone was silent. I had turned it off. I had handed my private keys to Marcus and told him to manage the fallout of my resignation. I was no longer Alexander Blackwood, the most feared CEO in Manhattan. I was just a man on a plane, following a woman into a future I hadn't yet mapped out. It should have felt like a defeat. It should have felt like the end of the world. Instead, it felt like I was finally breathing oxygen for the first time in my life. I turned my head. Maya was standing at the small galley bar, pouring 2 glasses of water. She was still wearing the clothes from the tarmac, the midnight blue suit, now wrinkled and stained with the salt of the rain. Her hair had come loose from its knot, falling in dark, wavy curtains over her shoulders. She looked beautiful. She looked powerful. She looked like the owner of everything I had once called mine. "You're doing it again," she said, not looking at me. "Doing what?" "Staring, like you're trying to calculate my worth." She walked over and handed me a glass, her fingers brushing mine. "I'm not calculating anything, Maya. I'm just realizing that I've never seen you clearly until right now." I took a sip of the water, my eyes never leaving hers. "I gave it all to you. The project, the money, the legacy. Does it feel heavy?" Maya sat in the chair opposite me, leaning back into the cream leather. She looked out the window for a moment, the moonlight catching the gold in her eyes. "It feels like justice, Alexander. But yes, it's heavy. I spent my life fighting to get a seat at the table, and now I own the whole room. I'm not sure I know what to do with the silence." "The silence is where the truth lives," I whispered. I reached across the table and took her hand. "I meant what I said on the tarmac. I'll follow you wherever you need to go. If that's Zurich, then I'm in Zurich. If it's a lab in the middle of nowhere, then that's where I'll be. I'm not the boss anymore, Maya. I'm yours." The word yours hung in the air, a final, beautiful surrender. Maya looked at our joined hands. I saw her thumb trace the line of my knuckles. "You're a terrible follower, Alexander. You're built to lead. You're built to command." "Then command me," I challenged, my voice dropping to a low, seductive rasp. "Tell me what you want from me. Tell me how to be the man who deserves to sit in this cabin with you." Maya's gaze shifted, the intellectual clarity of the scientist being replaced by the dark, shimmering heat of the woman. She stood up, not letting go of my hand, and pulled me to my feet. "I don't want a commander," she breathed, stepping into my space until our chests were touching. "And I don't want a servant. I want the man who is brave enough to give it all away. I want the man who is locked in with me by choice." She reached up and pulled my head down, her lips finding mine in a kiss that was slow, deep, and filled with a new kind of power. This wasn't the kiss of a subordinate or a captive. This was the kiss of the woman who owned the room. And God, I had never wanted to be owned more in my life. Maya POV. The cabin of the jet was a sanctuary of blue light and soft leather. As I kissed Alexander, I felt the shift. It was a physical thing, a transfer of energy that made my skin hum. For weeks, he had been the one who dictated the rhythm of our lives. He had been the predator, the protector, the boss. But now, as he followed my lead, I felt the sheer, intoxicating weight of my own desire. I pulled back just an inch, my breath hitching. "The medical team is in the back with my father. They won't disturb us." Good, Alexander growled, his hands sliding down to my hips, pulling me flush against the hard, demanding line of his body. Because I've been waiting since the Hamptons to have you without a contract hanging over our heads. He picked me up, my legs wrapping around his waist. He didn't carry me to the berth. He backed me against the mahogany door of the galley, his mouth finding the sensitive skin of my neck. Alexander, I gasped, my fingers digging into the soaked fabric of his shirt. You're the boss, Maya, he whispered against my skin, his teeth grazing my collarbone. Tell me to stop. Tell me you want me to stay in my seat and act like a professional. I don't want a professional, I said, my voice breaking. I want you, all of you. He groaned, a deep, primal sound that vibrated through my entire body. He moved his hands to the zipper of my suit jacket, his fingers trembling with a frantic, desperate energy. The jacket fell to the floor, followed by my blouse. In the dim light of the cabin, surrounded by the hum of the engines and the vastness of the Atlantic, we were stripped of everything but the truth. He looked at me, really looked at me, his eyes dark with a mixture of reverence and hunger. He traced the curve of my waist, the slope of my hip, as if he were memorizing a landscape he finally had permission to explore. You are so beautiful, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. I spent so long trying to buy this, trying to secure it. I was such a fool. You weren't a fool, I whispered, reaching out to cup his face. You were just a Blackwood, but that's over now. I pulled him down to the plush carpet of the jet. The steamy heat of our connection was no longer a battle, it was a fusion. We moved together with a slow, agonizing precision, every touch a question, every kiss an answer. He was gentle, his movements a testament to the surrender he had promised. He followed the rhythm of my breath, the arch of my back, the way my name sounded when I whispered it into the dark. This was the fallout. The destruction of the old world had left us with this, a raw, unshielded intimacy that was more powerful than any billion-dollar merger. As he claimed me, his eyes locked on mine, I didn't see the CEO or the ruthless billionaire. I saw the man who had walked through the rain. I saw the man who had given up his life to save mine. I love you, I gasped, my heart feeling like it was bursting. I'm yours, he replied, his voice a low, steady anchor in the storm of our passion. Forever, wherever you go, I follow. Alexander POV, 2 hours later. Maya was asleep in the berth, her head resting on my chest, her arm draped across my waist. The cabin was quiet, the blue light having faded into the gray pre-dawn of the European time zone. I stayed awake, watching the stars. I felt a strange sense of peace. My life was in ruins. My mother was likely already meeting with the board to finalize my removal. My bank accounts were being frozen. My name was being dragged through the mud of every tabloid in New York. And yet, I had never felt more successful. I looked at the documents Maya had left on the table. The transfer of the Sterling IP, the resignation, the trust funds. I had given her the keys to the kingdom, and in doing so, I had found my own freedom. But I knew Act III wouldn't be all silk sheets and high-altitude romance. Julian Vane was bankrupt, but he wasn't gone. My mother was a wounded lioness, and she would strike again. We were heading to Zurich, to the heart of the European Old Guard, and we were doing it with a target on our backs. I reached out and stroked Maya's hair, her dark locks soft between my fingers. I would protect her, not as the boss and not with a locked-in clause. I would protect her as a man who had nothing left to lose but the woman in his arms. A soft chime sounded from the galley. The medical team. I carefully disentangled myself from Maya and stood up, pulling on my shirt. I walked to the back of the plane where the medical suite was located. The head nurse, a woman named Helga, was checking my father-in-law's vitals. The room was sterile, filled with the hiss of oxygen and the rhythmic beep of the monitors. "How is he?" I asked, my voice low. "His neural activity is spiking, Mr. Blackwood. It's consistent with a REM cycle, but deeper. It's like he's trying to wake up." She looked at me, her expression professional but curious. "The change in altitude seems to be triggering a response in the mapping algorithm." "Keep him stable," I said. "We land in Zurich in 2 hours. The Hirslanden clinic is ready for the transfer." I looked at Maya's father. He looked like a man trapped in a glass box, much like I had been. I realized then that my mission wasn't just to save Maya's reputation. It was to finish the work her father had started, to prove that the sterling legacy was more than just a theft. I walked back to the main cabin. Maya was awake, sitting up in the berth, the sheet pulled to her chest. She looked at me, her eyes clear and searching. "Is he okay?" she asked. "He's fighting," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "just like you." She reached out and took my hand. "We're almost there, aren't we?" "Almost." "Alexander, what happens when we land? When the world sees that you're with me and that you've given me everything? Then the world will realize that I'm the luckiest man on earth." I kissed her knuckles, my eyes locked on the diamond on her finger. "Let them talk. Let them sue. Let them try to take the tower. We have the code, we have the clinic, and we have each other. Everything else is just fallout." Maya POV. The descent into Zurich was a blur of gray clouds and the white peaks of the Alps. I stood by the window as the plane banked, the city below looking like a toy village of stone and order. This was the city of my father's youth. This was where he had dreamed of the mapping project before the Blackwoods turned his dream into a nightmare. I felt Alexander's hand on my shoulder. He was dressed in a new suit, a simple black one without the Blackwood crest on the cufflinks. He looked sharp, but the Titan edge was gone, replaced by a quiet, lethal competence. "The medical transport is on the tarmac," he said. "The Swiss authorities have cleared the clearance, but the press is here too. My mother's reach is long, Maya." "I'm not afraid of her anymore, Alexander." "I know you're not, but I am." He turned me to face him, his hands cupping my face. "I'm afraid of what she'll do to get to the code. She doesn't care about the company anymore. She cares about the control. She wants the sterling IP because it's the only thing that proves Arthur Blackwood was a thief." "Then we'll give it to her," I said. Alexander froze. "What?" "We'll give her the truth, publicly, in the middle of the Zurich summit next week." I leaned in, my voice growing stronger. "She thinks she can hide behind the Knight Agreement. She thinks she can use the fallout to bury the evidence. But if I present the 1994 journals at the summit, if I show the world the original signatures—" "She'll go to prison," Alexander finished, his eyes widening. "You'd be destroying the Blackwood name forever." "The name is already destroyed, Alexander. You gave it up on that tarmac. Now, we're just clearing the rubble so we can build something new." Alexander looked at me for a long time. I saw the pain in his eyes, the weight of his family's history, the loss of the only world he had ever known. But then he nodded, a slow, decisive movement. "Follow me," he said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "I thought you were following me." "I am, but I know where the coffee is in this airport, and I think we're going to need it." Alexander POV. The doors of the jet opened, and the cold, crisp air of Switzerland rushed in. It smelled of pine and snow and a sterile, beautiful order. I stepped out first, but I didn't walk ahead. I stayed at the bottom of the stairs, reaching up to take Maya's hand as she descended. The photographers were there, lined up behind the security fence. The flashes were less aggressive than in New York, but the intensity was the same. "Mr. Blackwood, why Zurich?" "Miss Sterling, are you the new CEO of Blackwood Industries? Is the merger officially dead?" We didn't answer. We walked toward the waiting black Mercedes, our hands interlaced. I watched the medical team move the father's gurney into the ambulance. I watched the Swiss police form a perimeter. Everything was managed. Everything was under control. But as we settled into the back of the car, I saw a familiar face in the crowd of reporters. A man in a gray suit, watching us with a look of quiet, scholarly disdain. Eris Thorne. He had followed us. He had taken a commercial flight and was now standing on the tarmac in Zurich, the truth clutched in his leather briefcase. "He's here," Maya whispered, seeing him too. "He wants to see the fire," I said, pulling her closer. "He wants to make sure I don't try to buy the graveyard again." "Are you going to?" "No," I looked out the window at the mountains. "I'm done buying things, Maya. From now on, I'm only interested in what I can build with my own two hands." The car pulled away, heading toward the Hirslanden Clinic. The city of Zurich unfolded before us, a world of banks and watches and secrets. I was the man who had followed the woman who owned the room. And as the fallout of our life in New York began to settle, I realized that the real war was just beginning. Julian Vane, Eleanor Blackwood, the Sterling journals. They were all converging in this cold, beautiful city. But as I looked at Maya, her hand in mine, the diamond on her finger a spark of light in the gray morning, I knew that the steward was gone. I was the partner. I was the lover. And I was the one who was going to ensure that the Sterling legacy was finally, truly free. Maya POV. The Hirslanden Clinic was a masterpiece of modern medicine. It sat on a hill overlooking the lake, a white-tanned glass structure that looked like it had been carved from a glacier. We spent the afternoon settling my father into the advanced neural recovery wing. The Swiss doctors were efficient, their tone respectful. They didn't care about the tabloids or the Blackwood name. They only cared about the data. Around 8:00 p.m., I walked out onto the balcony of the clinic. The lake was a dark mirror below, the lights of Zurich twinkling on the opposite shore. I felt Alexander's presence behind me. He wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. He had changed into a soft sweater and trousers. He smelled of pine and expensive soap. "He's in good hands, Maya," Alexander murmured. "I know. It feels surreal to be here. To have everything I ever wanted, and yet feel like I'm standing on a cliff's edge." "That's the fallout," he said, his lips grazing my ear. "The world we knew is gone. We're building a new one from the wreckage. It's supposed to feel unstable." He turned me in his arms, his eyes searching mine. "I have something for you." Not a contract, not an investment. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. It wasn't the Sterling journals. It was a blank notebook, its pages white and waiting. "What is this?" "It's the new project," Alexander said. "The one that doesn't have a Blackwood name on it. I want us to start writing the real history of the neural mapping algorithm. The truth from the beginning, no theft, no lies, just the science." I took the book, my fingers tracing the soft leather. "A new project." "A partnership," he corrected. 50-50, no boss, no advisor, just us. I looked up at him, the man who had followed me halfway across the world. I saw the sincerity in his eyes, the raw, unshielded love that had replaced the ruthless ambition. "I like the sound of that," I whispered. I reached up and pulled him into a kiss, a slow, lingering promise of a future that was finally ours to write. The fire was gone, replaced by the cool, steady clarity of the Swiss night. But as we stood there, locked together on the balcony, I saw a single, red light on the dashboard of a car parked at the bottom of the hill. A camera. The world was still watching. The fallout wasn't over. But as Alexander pulled me closer, his hand protective on the small of my back, I realized that I wasn't afraid of the cameras anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being observed. I was the one who was leading. And Alexander Blackwood was right behind me. Alexander POV, midnight. I sat at the small desk in our hotel suite, the blank notebook Maya had left there mocking me. I looked at my laptop. I had one final task before I could truly leave the Blackwood world behind. I had to face the lioness. I opened the video link. It was a private channel to the Blackwood estate in New York. My mother's face appeared on the screen. She was sitting in the library, a glass of champagne in her hand. She looked untouched by the scandal. "So?" Elinor said, her voice a chill in the room. "The steward has found his sanctuary. How is the air in Zurich, Alexander? Is it as clean as your conscience?" "The merger is dead, Mother," I said, my voice cold and flat. "Knight is in custody. The board is voting on your removal tomorrow morning. It's over." "It's never over, Alexander. You think you can just give it all away and be free. You're a Blackwood. The blood in your veins is made of the same greed you claim to hate." She leaned closer to the camera, her eyes narrowing. "The Sterling girl will realize eventually. She'll realize that the only reason you gave her the company was to keep her from seeing the real secret." I felt a surge of dread. What secret? "The 1994 journals aren't the only thing Arthur hid," Elinor whispered, a slow, terrifying smile spreading across her face. "Ask Eris Thorne about the third partner. Ask him why he's really in Zurich." The screen went black. I sat in the silence, the words echoing in my head, the third partner. I looked toward the bedroom where Maya was sleeping. I had told her the fallout was just clearing the rubble, but as I looked at the dark mountains outside, I realized that the rubble was deeper than I thought. I stood up and walked to the window. Act III was fallout. And as the clock struck midnight in Zurich, I realized that the first surrender was just the beginning. The real war wasn't for the room. It wasn't for the company. It was for the soul of the woman I loved, and I would follow her into the darkest part of the history to keep her safe. Maya POV, end of chapter 28. I woke up in the middle of the night. The room was cold. Alexander was standing by the window, his silhouette dark against the city lights. He looked like the man I had first met, the ruthless, solitary billionaire. But as he turned and saw me, the expression vanished. "You're awake," he said softly. I felt the cold. I sat up, the sheet falling to my waist. "Alexander, what's wrong?" "Nothing," he said, walking back to the bed. He sat on the edge and took my hand. "Just thinking about the summit, about the truth. We'll face it together." "Together," he agreed. He leaned down and kissed me, a slow, protective kiss that felt like a goodbye and a hello all at once. But as I looked into his eyes, I saw the shadow. The secret he was still trying to keep. The fallout was coming. And this time, I wasn't sure if the steward could protect me from the man who was following me. I pulled him closer, my heart heavy with the weight of the new world. We were locked in. But the cage was no longer made of steel. It was made of the truth. And the truth was about to change everything. Next chapter, chapter 29, She's More Than a Desire,